can see how hydrophobic that surface is now. That water is not really getting it wet. It's kind of sitting on top as opposed to actually getting the surface wet. It's really kind of cool. So I'm building this L-shaped desk for my son, and as you can see by the top and the legs here, he wanted a very dark, blacked out look for the finish on this desk. So these two legs will support the middle corner section of the desk, and then a couple weeks ago I built two drawer units that will support the ends. So I built the cabinet boxes and the drawers out of maple veneered plywood, but I made the tops, the legs, the face frames, and the drawer fronts out of 8/4 hard maple. And since he wanted this dark blacked out look for the desk, it only made sense to use Rubio Monocoat Black to do the finish. The only problem is that Rubio Monocoat Black doesn't make the wood this dark, it makes it look more like this. Now that's nice and all, it looks fine, it's just not the look that we were going for. He really wanted something that was a lot darker than that. Now as you can see, I did get the look I was going for, but I had to find something that would take me from this to this. And to do that, I turned to another Rubio product that I had never used before. And that product is this. It's called Rubio Monocoat Precolor Easy, and the color I used, Intense Black. So like I usually do before using a new product, I went to the internet and I looked up some videos on how to apply this stuff. Now as many of you probably know, Rubio Monocoat was developed as a hardwood flooring finish and is used a lot in that industry. Now the same goes for their Precolor Easy product, so a lot of the videos I found were on how to apply it to large areas and hardwood floors. And the main concern when applying this to a large area is you want to avoid lap lines. Now I wasn't too concerned about that. This is a pretty good size, it's 67 by 24, but I figured I could just start at one end, work my way across, keeping a wet edge going the whole time, and I would get a nice even finish, and as you can see, it turned out really nice. But I do have a confession to make, and that is the top of this large piece here, I had to do it twice. So once these pieces were all sanded and ready for finish, I flipped them over and started on the bottoms. I dyed the bottoms and all the edges first, and I used the chamfers I milled in as a natural break to avoid the lap lines, and that worked out really good. I let the pieces dry overnight, I flipped them over, and then I did the top. So I did the top of the small piece, it looked great. I started to do the top of the big piece, everything was going fine, and then right about in here, kind of towards the middle, I started noticing something that didn't look quite right, but I kept going. I finished off the whole piece. I used the blue wipe all towels, wiped it all down really good. There was a problem with my sanding in the middle section of this large piece. Now I don't know what was going on when I was finished sanding the top of this piece. If I was tired, I wasn't really paying attention like I should have been, but here in the middle there was a dip, and then like every 4 or 5 inches there would be a little peak, and then a dip, a long dip, a little peak, a long dip, a little peak. So obviously when I was sanding this, I was going back and forth like this, and usually on a long piece like this, my final couple passes all go long ways with the grain. I think that's a good practice. Obviously I didn't do that. I did cross grain, and I was just digging troughs, I guess, with my sander. Now when the wood was just nice light colored maple, I couldn't see it at all. It looked fine. But when you put color on it like this, every little imperfection just gets highlighted. It was really a pretty dumb mistake. I mean, I have this cool little light here I use for, they call it a raking light. You can get down on a piece like this, you can really see every little imperfection in the wood, but did I use this? No. And just rubbing my hand across the piece where those undulations were, I could totally feel them with my hand, but did I do that before I started applying this dye? No. So this could have easily been avoided, but now I had this big finished piece of wood that looked terrible. So what do I do? So obviously the only answer was I had to resand this. I had to sand off all the black and re-dye it. But I wasn't sure how deep the dye penetrated the wood. Would I sand this down so much where the thickness would be off and I would have to resand the smaller piece too and redo it? Was I going to resand through my little chamfers here and have to rebevel all the edges? I just didn't know. Luckily, I had this scrap piece that I did a couple tests on, and this piece right here, this side, this was all black with that with the dye on it. So I just started sanding this to see if I could get down to bare wood. And it turns out the dye didn't penetrate into this wood very deep at all. I think that's because this is hard maple. It's a pretty dense, hard wood. If this were a softer, more porous wood, it would probably penetrate deeper. But I was able to sand off all the dye on this piece without too much trouble. So I didn't want to get too aggressive with this. I started with 150. I sanded long ways with the grain, and those peaks really started highlighting as I was taking them down. Once I got it pretty much all sanded down to bare wood, I switched to 180, finished it off with that, and then I re-dyed it, and it turned out really nice. So if you've been thinking about using Precolor Easy on some of your projects, but you're a little nervous about it like I was, don't be. You just wipe it on, wipe it off, keep a wet edge going to avoid lap lines, and remember, you can always use a crisp edge like the edge of a chamfer or a corner for a natural barrier between two applications to also avoid lap lines. Another thing I wanted to mention is this is a water-based product, so you can thin this. I thinned it about 20%. I just use these little syringes, the same syringes I use for measuring out Rubio monocoat to measure my water to dye ratio. Thinning this out 20% didn't affect the color at all. It just made the product go a little farther. So this side of the desk is 67 by 24. The smaller side is 42 by 20. And I bought 3 bottles of this, and I went through 2 of them. So 2 bottles did top, bottom, and edges of both of these pieces and the legs. And there's a little bit left in that second bottle. And I applied the dye the same way I apply Rubio monocoat. Spread it out, and I work it into the wood with these white Scotch-Brite pads. And then I wipe off the excess with the blue wipe all towels. And if you want to use these same products that work for me, I'll have links to everything in the description. So once the dye job was done, I let the pieces sit overnight so they got nice and dry. And over the next couple days, I applied Rubio monocoat pure to the pieces, top and bottom, and all the edges. That was about a week ago, so the Rubio is nice and fully cured, and I'm going to apply another product to this that I've never used before. I figured since this is going in the bedroom of a 15-year-old boy, I wanted some extra protection on it. So I got this N3 Nano coat from Cam over at Blacktail Studio. This is another product that looks like it's pretty easy to apply. It's a wipe on and wipe off finish. The only difference is the open time, the working time with this is a lot shorter than Rubio. According to the instructions for this, depending on temperature, you only have 2 to 3 minutes between the initial application and the final buff off. So you want to work in sections that are small enough you think you can complete within that time frame. All right, I started by cleaning the whole top and the edges with the N3 prep spray, and now I'm going to apply the hard coat. So I'm just working this in. If it ever starts to feel tacky to me, I'm going to start wiping it off. I still doesn't feel tacky right now, but it's been about, I don't know how many seconds. It's probably been enough time. I can probably start buffing this off. So just buff it lightly. Just kind of the weight of your hand. You don't really want to press too hard and rub it all off. You just want to buff it out nice and light. Definitely changes the sheen of the top. A little bit more of a glossy sheen to it. Now between this hard coat and the top coat, I'm going to have to wait 24 hours. So I'll have to do the top coat on this tomorrow, but I'm going to go ahead and do the hard coat on the big side. All right, guys, that's the N3 Nano hard coat applied. It was really simple. I did that small top in 2 sections. I did the larger top in 3 sections. I went over it really well with a light to make sure I had no spots that were shinier than others. That's an indication that you didn't buff off enough, and both tops are looking really good. So now I just have to wait 24 hours before I do the top coat. It's applied the same way, and then wait 3 or 4 days after that, and I can move this into my son's room, which is great because that's going to free up my table saw, which I need to build his drawer fronts. All right, so it's been about 3 days since I did the top coat. I just want to do a quick demo and show you what this does for him. I'm gonna pour a little water on here. You can see that puddle, how it moves around. You can see how hydrophobic that surface is now. That water is not really getting it wet. It's kind of sitting on top as opposed to actually getting the surface wet. It's really kind of cool. And this is what prevents, like if you put a wet cup on there or something, it prevents, you know, rings and stuff like that, water stains being left behind on your furniture. Just like that, it's dry. So that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you get notified when new videos come out. Post a comment down below. All that stuff helps the channel out and it's free to you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.